Welcome back.
Part 4
of our series. And now we're going to talk about how should you serve your church. And I think it's a really important thing to understand. And I've had many people come and message me and come and sit and talk with us, and it's like, where's the humility? People come in with all sorts of ridiculous claims, trying to jump into positions of leadership. But that's not biblical, and it's not right. As we've closed on our last video, greatest is that who serves. Humility is the most important thing, and humility should be at the heart of our reason for joining a church, so that we can serve in the way they want us to serve. And I think that's a really important thing. It shouldn't matter what the church asks us to do. We should be happy to serve.
Yeah.
And I think it's a really big thing, because so many people join a church thinking, I want to be a worship leader. I want to worship. I want to be on the welcoming team because I'm really good at welcoming people. Or I want to be on kids ministry because I love kids. Or I want to be a preacher because I love to talk, or whatever it is people want to do. Or I want to be a sound technician because I like doing twizzle things. But it's at the heart, that's wrong. You should just want to serve in whatever way they need you to serve. Which, if it's absolutely nothing, then you have the best position of all, because you get to sit at the Lord's feet and just intercede. And it's a really important thing to first and foremost check your heart motive on how do you want to serve. What is it in the heart of when you join a church, and what is it you're trying to do by joining a church?
And I think very timely, we read it in Elisabeth Elliot's book last night, and she was saying that maybe the church assigns you a very mundane position that you didn't particularly want. And as Elo said, it then comes down to your heart. So maybe they ask you, can you stack chairs for us? And
free workout.
And you wanted to be a singer on the worship team because you've got a fantastic voice. And as the quote, I will do my best, from Elisabeth Elliot, she said last night there was 3 women doing laundry, and someone walked past the first and said, what are you doing? And she said, oh, I'm doing laundry. She walked past the second lady and said, what are you doing? And she said, oh, I'm doing these dreadful household chores. And she walked past the third woman and said, what are you doing? And the third person said, I've got 3 young children who I'm raising in the ways of the Lord, knowing that one day they will serve the Lord with all of their heart and their strength, and I am washing their clothes with joy and love so that they can be dressed appropriately for the work set before them. And it's all about your heart posture. So you can stack chairs with the heart of the third lady in that story. And I think that that's really important, that, as you've said, it's serving the church in the way that they want and need you to serve, not in the way that you think you should be serving.
And I think that's the really most important thing. I know for us personally, I remember when we first started our walk with God, and we was having all sorts of crazy things happening in our lives, with miracles and demons and just people being set free from sin and oppression, and it was crazy stuff we was having happen. And then people would say to us, like, why you? What have you done? And I'd literally cry, I go, nothing. I just wanted to make coffee. I just wanted to be the dude that hid in the back making coffee for people. I just wanted to be the guy that's cleaned up and put chairs away and made coffee for Jesus' church. And Jesus knows that's the truth of my heart motive. And that's why if you come to our church, I will give you good coffee, because that's what I want to do. But it's the truth of our hearts. And when we go to a church, we always say, I want to serve.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't matter how they tell you to serve. There are various ways churches do need help. Yeah. From people who clean before church, to people who clean after church, to people who set church up, the people who set church down, the people who provide food for the church to eat and drink, the people who clean up the food to eat and drink, the people who provide finances for the church to run, the people who spend the finances for the church to run. There are so many, the people who lead in worship, the people who do electronic communications. There's so much serving that needs to be done in a church.
Yeah. And I think in our time where we've been with churches and ministries, we've served in different ways as well. We've served by setting up, going ahead early, setting things up. We've also served just by being the openers, so opening the facility, welcoming people. So there's multiple ways you can serve, and it doesn't mean that that's the final place God will have you rest. Maybe it is, but it doesn't mean it is. But whatever it is that you're doing in that season, it's about trusting the church's authority, that they've put you in that place and they've asked you to do that for a reason, and trusting that God has a plan and using it.
It's an important thing I remember very early in our, not early in our walk actually, just before we started our own church, was when COVID was rife and I had no work and Danielle had work, and I said, God, what do you want me to do with my time? And God said to me, you are the house cleaner. And I was in charge of cleaning, clothes, ironing, cooking, cleaning. I was in charge of all the housework because Danielle was going out to work. And for me, I was like, you know, I had two options in that time. I could have gone, God, but I'm the man. I'm the man of God. I'm the anointed one. I've been praying for people, Jesus, and eyes have been opened and demons have fled. What do you mean I'm here scrubbing floors and skirting? Or I could have said, yes, Lord, I'll do whatever you need me to do in that season. And I went for the latter. I was like, yes, Lord, I'll do whatever you need me to do in the season. And I'd be ironing and I'd have blisters on my hand. And I was like, Lord, help me in this. And Jesus said to me, no, this is just minor suffering. Your hands have blisters. What about my hands, which had nails? And I was like, yes, Lord, help me find joy in the suffering. And I ended up, I know it sounds silly, but for someone who was so egotistical as I was, to be humbled, to be scrubbing the floors and skirting, it was hard. But I learned to find joy in that humility, and now I take joy in cleaning. I take joy in picking an option to serve the house instead of serving myself.
I thought you were the one that made the mess and I clean it up.
I do. And I take joy in having to clean up when she's doing a half job and doesn't want to do her work. But no. It's a truth, you know, and it was a lesson that I learned with God in it. The genuine truth is, whether you are the person leading the prayer, or you're the person cleaning up the chairs, or you're the person who has absolutely nothing to do apart from intercede, your joy in the Lord should be the same. If you get more joy from being on the platform or being in a position of authority, that means you take more pride in what you're doing versus taking pride in the Lord.
It means it's about you and not about God.
Yeah, so it shouldn't matter if it's you being the preacher or someone else being a preacher. What matters is the Spirit of God descending onto that place? Is the glory of God manifesting that's convicting and changing people? If the answer is yes, it doesn't matter what your role was in that process. What matters most is, did God turn up? And I think if you always remember that is at the forefront of your mind, that your role is to do whatever the leader thinks is needed to bring forth the glory of God, that's all that matters. That's how you serve your church. Yeah. But the most important thing, as we started, is to check your heart motive. While you have goals and ambitions leading to ministry, your heart still is not right before the Lord. And I think that's the fundamental thing to remember when you're joining a church. You're not joining a church for ministry. You're not joining the church to have a career. You're not joining the church to get a salary. You should be doing it all for free in love of serving the Lord.
Yeah. And again, that's something that you see in the book of Acts. It's always going to be the best reference, where they committed themselves, they devoted themselves, and they weren't receiving a salary for that.
They certainly were not.
I suppose moving on, talking about money and finances, so how else should we be serving our church that we choose to be a member of in terms of finances? And
I guess that will be the next video in the series. Do we have to tithe?
Yes.
So, please like, comment, subscribe, all that good YouTube stuff.
We're done.
Thank you everyone. 4 down, 2 to go. Peace!